indexation done by SSNIT. Let me state here and state it very categorically that SSNIT indexation is very transparent. We do it according to the law. Section 780 of the National Pension Act says that pension indexation should be done annually in line with wage inflation. And if you know, or if you've done a little economics, you understand that wage inflation comprises of inflation, the price inflation, productivity, and merit. So in line with what the presenter is saying, we have been doing the indexation with inflation in mind, and we've been doing it more than that. We have also listened to the fact that he's saying that we should do it like the other OECD countries who have been increasing their pension in line with inflation. And we are just looking at some of the figures. When you look at Norway, inflation I'm going to use 2023, when the inflation rate was very high in the country. In Norway, they had 5.25% in 2023 as their inflation rate. In Ghana, our inflation rate for the year, at the end of the year, was 40.27%. Even Norway did not index their pension to that full inflation rate. We in Ghana indexed our pension by 25% for that year. And in that year alone, a lot of our pensioners earn more than 50% because of the redistribution that we have done. Another thing that I think was a bit misleading was when it came to the minimum wage. The minimum wage we give to only the new pensioners who are entering the pension payroll in a certain year. So if you're on 300 cedis this year, next year when we increase pensions, a person is going to get more than 300. I was just looking at the effective percentage increase that we have done over the years. For the last 6 years, our minimum wage had an effective rate with both the redistribution, the fixed amount and the fixed rate that we've done. Our minimum wage had a 291% increase for the last 6 years. It comes, for those on 500%, it comes to 227%. Those on 5,000 are getting 157%. And the person on the highest pension had 81%. So we can say that we are effectively increasing those on the low pensions, and that on the high pension is also getting. The key here is to preserve the purchasing power of the pensioners. So you don't want to make somebody worse off. We want to make them a par with what they were receiving the previous year. In 2020, our Board of Trustees approved a paper that we have to do redistribution in line with inflation rate, where our redistribution for our flat rate should be equal to the indexation rate of a certain year, and any excess amount we redistribute for our pensioners. That redistribution is just the excess amount we would have paid to those on the higher pension, which comes to everybody. And when we look at that, we have done that effectively since that period. So my questions are a lot. I don't even want to start answering all the questions. But my first question is, with all the examples that we're giving, I don't see any African country being compared here. So what is being done in other African countries? It's good to be compared to matured schemes, but those are very mature schemes. Those are very developed economical countries, and I don't think it's very fair to ask us to do exactly what is being done in those countries. One thing that we can do, and which I agree with the presenter, is that if we want to change the way we do our indexation, the policy has to change. The law has to be reformed, because our indexation is engrafted in the law, and we cannot do anything else unless the law is reformed. So this is a conversation that must be had as to how we want our indexation done, and if it has to be done, we have to get the parliamentarians and the cabinet to change the law so that those on the low income pensions can get a better pension. Fortunately, we received the document a couple of weeks before this presentation, and we tried to mimic what the formulas that were in there. But our only frustration was that it looks like those middle income earners were going to be a bit worse off, and we didn't want to do that. So what we are going to do is work with you to see how we can make the formula more, what's the word? Workable, robust, thank you. Robust, then at the end of the day, we can all apply it, because at the end of the day, pension is supposed to help our members become comfortable but not richer. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Transparency probably was not well positioned. I think what the presenter wanted to say was that there was some inconsistency, because he cited a case of when inflation was 31, the rate was 19, and when it was 41, it was 10%. So I think the word should be not transparent, but maybe some inconsistency in the way it is done. And then secondly, I think you're right. This is just the beginning. We have by no means say that this is the only way, this is the way to go. We said this is an opening for us to discuss and maybe improve upon it and see whether it's implementable. And of course, if it's going to be implemented, we'll have to go through all the necessary processes, parliament, wherever. Government must first accept that it's okay. SSNIT itself, at the highest level, must accept that this is something maybe we need to go by, and then we go through the normal process to change. But it's not an imposition. It's a beginning. It's a way to show that there's an alternative way to do it, and maybe if we're able to do it, it could make people better. Of course, you cited the middle group being maybe not being helped a bit. So in a process of discussion, we see how we can iron out all these things, and somebody used the word robust, and make the system, the formulas a bit more robust for implementation. So thank you for SSNIT. Yes, another SSNIT, maybe we should. Another SSNIT? Okay, go ahead.
Paper, and from how I heard it from the presenter, it was as if it was only the indexation that was done, or the redistribution, but nowhere in other countries you realize that they were focusing on also retirement age. So like my boss said, it will be much better when it's put in a broader perspective of pension reforms after 2010. We've all seen what has happened. We've all seen the increasing cost that the law has actually brought to SSNIT, and I'm glad you yourself pointed it out and all of that. So you said that you hope that 2026 indexation, blah, 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 blah. It has to be in a broader perspective, not to take it only in isolation, because we can actually also hurt the scheme in a way if we don't do it holistically. Then with the issue of the 300 that have been maintained, I think my boss also touched on it, that from the way you presented it, I think there was a bit of misrepresentation or misleading, because the highest pensioner is moving. I think we should have compared the highest pensioner moving from that particular year to the minimum pensioner in that particular year also moving. But you kept the 300 at par and left the other person moving. But the one who was taking 300 at that time is now taking about 1,000 cedis plus. So that bit, I think that has to be also be checked. And then again, the 300 that has been maintained. Mr. Chairman, we did a little paper recently, and we realized that in most African countries, including Finland, Italy, Netherlands, which I have the figures here, I mean, there was no country that had minimum pension more than minimum wage. No country had minimum pension. Few countries have minimum wage at par with minimum pension. But economically, it doesn't come out well when minimum pension is more than minimum wage. And it happened in Ghana at a point, I think the 2017 there, about the minimum pension was more than minimum wage. And then we realized that the retirement rate was increasing. Let's be honest to ourselves. If I am working and my minimum pension will be more than minimum wage, and I'm 55 years, why bother myself, bath in the morning, go through the stress, buy fuel, blah, 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 and come to work? When I retire, I'd rather receive something more than. And so there were reasons why we maintained it at 3. It may not be sufficient, but there are also economic implications that could be brought to the scheme and also, to the nation at large. And so that means that if this discussion is going on, then we should also push for consolidation of salaries in the country so that salaries and benefit could go up. Then they will all rise above the minimum poverty line. Then all of us will be good. There are a lot to say, but maybe we have to give other people opportunity as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Hamilton. Okay, any other question? The contents are well noted. Yes.
Well, thank you very much. My name is Kingsley Lau, and coming from Ghana Employees Association. I think earlier, during the recognition of institutions, for one reason or the other, was skipped. But I tend to side by the question that was asked by the earlier speaker from SSNIT regarding the benchmarked countries, because I was expecting to at least see economies that have similar, economic outlook or characteristics as that of Ghana. Let's say Ivory Coast, what is happening in Ivory Coast, what is happening in Kenya, and all that. And I believe once we do that, we'll be able to actually now properly benchmark and indicate that based on these macroeconomic characteristics, they are somewhat same as Ghana, but these are what actually are happening in these economies in Ghana, also adopting a different model altogether. And I also saw the minimum wage aspect. Yes, I think he just mentioned what I wanted to highlight. The fact that it was kept constant. I read recent publication from SSNIT, and I think the minimum pension earner is 514 cedis, as compared to the maximum earner 205,000, right? Which I saw a bit of variance also in the presentation, because it was kept at.
Can you say that again?
I think 514 cedis.
As a minimum?
Yes, compared to 205,000. Recent publications by SSNIT 2025. So maybe we could have a look at that. I in your report, I think you didn't project that of 2025. No. But I realized in your presentation you incorporated it. So maybe I wanted to cross-check with SSNIT as well. And more importantly, looking at the objective of the new indexation model was to ensure, one, adequacy in terms of, and also equitable distribution, and primarily to also enhance financial sustainability of it. At the end of the day, what I was looking out for was to see actual expenditure in terms of the cost of benefit payment, right? Under the current model compared with the proposed model, so that at least we're able to know that currently, in terms of cost or expenditure, this is the outlook of it. And then when it comes to the proposed indexation, okay, this is what, even if we don't use the current actuarial figures that we have, we could project to see the proposed rate that we are given, and then see the expenditure we'll be arriving at, so that we'll be able to know which one is beneficial in terms of our objectives. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for your question and comment.
For instance, in 2013 and 2014, they doubled the minimum pension increment all the way up to 2016. Then in 2017, when they increased it they didn't increase it in 2017, but they increased it in 2018. In 2019, it had come to 300 Ghana cedis, and it has been there up to this point, and I said we have to define what minimum pension is. Minimum pension is the least amount that a pensioner receives on the payroll. If you pick all the pensioners on the payroll and you look at the amount, if you scroll the minimum, it is the minimum pension that it's 300 Ghana cedis that is going to come up. So minimum pension, it is not as if we are looking at for a particular group. We are not looking at a particular group. You were 300 Ghana cedis and you have moved to 430 because they have index pension. The 430 cedis is not as if the 430 is the minimum pension. It is the 300 list that is paid to Ghanaian pension. That is what we call the minimum pension. It's a standard definition. So I think the problem has to do with how we define minimum pension. And if you look at in any SSNIT indexation report, when they say minimum pension, they will put 300 Ghana cedis there. Madam asked about why we didn't incorporate African countries. I think it was a question that we expected. Somehow, it appears like we're looking for best practices. We're looking for practices worth emulating. It is not as if we have to wait for an African country to innovate for us to copy because we are in the same pot. We're looking for best practices around the world. And when you look at, I think it was only Zambia that came very close in terms of pension reforms. Zambia, when you look at the African countries. So at the same point, we realized that it appears we are stuck. Most African countries are not undertaking pension reforms. So our focus was on best practices around the world. And most of the best practices actually came from the countries we cited. I remember you mentioned Norway. If you go into the detailed report, we have provided appendices. Norway is one of them. And I think we have indicated what was done. And I agree with you when you say we should not just be talking about pension indexation reforms. You mentioned that it should be done holistically. Right now, it is indexation that is causing us the problem as we have identified it. It is indexation that is opening the economic gap between the rich and the poor. Indexation is impacting on the scheme finances. So that is where we looked at the objectives and we were focused on the objectives. I think we have had other papers that talks about the general well-being of the Ghanaian pensioner in terms of tier 1, tier 2, how much benefit losses and blah, 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 blah. The focus here was how to use the pension indexation policies to improve the economic well-being of the Ghanaian pensioner and to meet the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Hamilton talked about consolidation of salaries. I think if we look at, it is a research that the Africa Center for Retirement Research has done before, even though we haven't published that. Many stakeholders talk about consolidating salaries in order to improve the pension, financial adequacy of the pension system. It is rather going to collapse the scheme much earlier. When you look at, if you consolidate salaries, what happens to, what do they call it? The maximum threshold for contributions. Currently, SSNIT has a maximum threshold beyond which they will accept contributions. And there is a reason for that. If you consolidate salaries, what will happen is that it's going to trigger high pension payments, even though there is a cap of 60% in terms of pension right. But we have looked at the data, we have done simulations, and the conclusion is that maybe it is something SSNIT would have to take up. We can share the work that we did on salary consolidation as far as pension system in Ghana is concerned. We can share it. You go and look at the data, and you see the impact it is rather going to have on the financial sustainability of the pension system. So it's going to have a retrogressive effect. Okay, so I think for now, that's it.
Before I come back to you, my understanding of minimum pension is that, and I may be wrong, if I'm wrong, correct me, is that when you calculate your pension and it's below 300 cedis, then we bump you up to 300. That is what is minimum pension. Is that a concern? Is that agreed? Yes, so that's a minimum pension. So there's no doubt about definition of minimum pension. It's when we calculate your pension and it's less than 300, we move you up to 300. After that, you can be affected by indexation and you can go moving up. So the minimum pension is still at 300. The question is, should we go beyond the 300 when people are still getting pensions after calculation to about 100, 150 to, so that's a very dicey thing, and that we need to look at it carefully before, if we need to put the minimum pension from 300, we do that. It needs a bit of study and a bit of good reasoning to go that way. Okay, thank you. Who has question?
Yes.
What constitute the 79%? Is it purely administrative? Does it include some operational costs? It will be helpful to know, because you remember in my earlier statement, I said that we are here as practitioners, but also as employees. And so it's good to have some of these details, that what does the 75 constitute? And what are the limitations of this model? So today it's pro war, which is good. Are we going to wake up tomorrow and have another, of course, research are supposed to evolve and all of that, but then are we going to have the middle class, for instance, saying that, look, this thing is not working for us because maybe we are contributing a little more? I am careful not to even say the upper class, because clearly from this research, we are saying that the principle of solidarity is not being observed as much as it should be. But then are we going to wake up one day and have the middle class also say that, hey, wait a minute, what are we doing? We seem to be just giving everything to the poor in the name of pro-poor, but well, we are working our ass for it. And so I want to know, or tease your thoughts on the limitations of this model. And I think I have one or two more. Yeah, the fourth one I have is to find out if this also includes the wage inflation as a variable. It's a means testing model, you said, but then are we still using the wage inflation or CPI as a variable? Then finally, to make a comment that MPRA is currently going through a review of the Act 766. And so this is a good time to share some proposals for amendment. Doc mentioned that they've worked on some things, which is with the TUC. And so it would be good for some of these things to be put together and share with MPRA. So that, because I remember when Madam was speaking, she did say that indexation can only be possible if it is rooted in law. And so some of these pieces of advice, I believe this is the best time. I think they gave us up to the end of the month or so to get some of stakeholders' inputs and all. So that's a comment I'd like to make for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more? I want to take a few questions and then Mr. Mashood will answer them.
And 3 Ghana cedis. So when you compare, you use that one. Fine, they are still on the payroll, but I still stand that when you are comparing the way they are moving, we should have considered maybe a court or a panel data that they move together, but you don't leave one person. That doesn't come out well. And then in our papers, you see that we talk about minimum pension in 2025, minimum pension in 2026. So it's not only vague like minimum pension, because the one coming on the payroll is a new entrant. And the one who was on minimum pension in this current year will obviously not be at the same level. Those who were there last year, now they are receiving 396. They were 300, but they have removed almost 400 Ghana cedis. So, this is going to the media, and we have to make sure that whatever goes out there actually gives a good representative and all of that. Obviously, SSNIT have gone through challenges. You said it. All of us know. It got to a point, contribution income was not sufficient. But I can tell you that now it's better. Like my boss said, the government has paid its debt of 2.5 billion. Even as of last year, December, they have cleared 2024 indebtedness of 1.05 billion and all of that. So now things are at least better than it used to be. So the point is that when we are doing indexation, we don't only consider wage inflation or price inflation. I can tell you that the framers of the law who used wage inflation was actually trying to help the pensioner. And that's what my boss said. If you use wage inflation, it's productivity, merit, and then inflation. And then in the Western world, they are using only inflation. So inflation will be better for all of us. But then it's not the same in our economic situation. So when we use inflation, I mean, from 2016 or coming down, with the exception of 2015, then 2022, when the economic crisis started, SSNIT has always indexed pension higher than inflation. And I think it would have been worth it, maybe we have pointed it out to know that yes, over the years, but until the crisis started, that is when the deviation has come in. I think that would have also been great and all of that. So we look at inflation, price inflation, wage inflation, then we look at the cost implication, which the speaker didn't add. Now, do we have the ability to pay? If we want to go by the 40% inflation, can SSNIT afford to pay? Knowing the situation that we have gone through because of the reduction in contribution, increment, and also in your paper, I think you pointed out that the high inflation, treasury bills went out. When we were making negative real returns, in paying lump sums were at a higher cost because of the treasury bill rates and all of that. So whenever we are doing some of these things, we also have to take into account ability to pay. But in all through your presentation, I didn't hear anything about ability to pay. But inflation is this. Let's index pension by this. Do we have the ability to pay? And if we just go by that inflation rate to pay, it will get to a time you and I, we will not receive pensions. And this is an intergenerational something. So please, let's put it in that perspective. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'm talking about today, Ghana. That's why I'm saying that I don't grasp the full import of your submission. But then, I mean, as an ordinary worker, I think that if somebody is there, I look at my salary, and it's not as if somebody is doing far better than you. Or I understand pension is a function of your salary or income or whatever it is you take. You know, so you look at the yawning gap and you're like, hey, what's going on here? You know, in a situation where the rich get richer and the poor poorer, I'm looking at, you know, what is happening here? For me, that's the whole thing. So you might have to actually break down the beautiful submission you have made to an ordinary street walker like me, you know, because that really, for us, is the point. And just to add that Dr. Odum happens to be a former Director General of SSNIT. So, and I understand you need to update your figures, Doc. That's just by the way. So, really, any other question? Yes. You want to answer that question
before he goes, I think
I think he wants to.
So that, I think, is not a right mode to go, because sustainability is important. I think in my opening remark, I talk about sustainability. In his presentation, he also talked about sustainability. So please, now you can answer your question.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I think you have taken the whole thing out of me. That is exactly what I was coming to say. In the presentation and even in my opening remarks, I said we are presenting a model that is going to create a balance between benefit adequacy and sustainability. And it's a way of contributing to the national policy dialogue on the subject of social security. The focus is not to point accusing fingers at anybody, but the focus here is to contribute to the policy dialogue. And we are bringing on board a model that is going to improve the pension system in Ghana. We talked about benefit adequacy, improving benefits for workers or retirees, and ensuring that the scheme is able to finance benefits well into the future. I think the objective of this engagement needs to be very clear. Nobody is saying somebody is doing anything wrong. And whatever we say, whether adequacy or sustainability, we support it with figures. Anyway, So that's just by the way. Thank you. Madam talked about rate of growth. No, I think earlier a gentleman from Employers Association mentioned that it would have been good if we could, find a way of letting them understand how much saving would be there if we use this model. I haven't brought it into the PowerPoint presentation, but when you go in there, into the main document, you'd find that we have compared how much the scheme would be paying vis-a-vis how much the scheme will be paying under the current legislation and how much the scheme will be paying if the new proposal is adopted. We have done that comparison, and the figures are there. A rate of growth of minimum pension and the maximum pension. I think Madam wanted to know. It's taking me back to the minimum pension, but as I said, what we know as minimum pension has been increasing. And I said, in some cases, it doubled. So if we are saying, given this peculiar circumstance of the scheme now, let's not increase minimum pension, then that is fine. But one good thing about this model is that we have to slow down the increasing economic gap. We have to slow down the rich pensioners a bit. That is what the whole thing is about. Once you slow them down, you are helping the scheme, and what you are saving is used to support poor pensioners. So rate of group of minimum pension, for the minimum pension, currently it is increased ad hocly, but we are just advocating that there is a need for us to increase it. The 79%, I mentioned 37% in 2014 to 65% in 2017 and to 79% in 2020. It also includes administrative and cost of benefits. So when you put the two together, that is what gives you the total cost of the scheme as against the revenue. And that is what we have had. Limitations of the model. I think the only limitation of the model is that there may be concerns about those at the nodes, those at the boundaries. Because the person was just left with one city to cross to the other boundary. And you are saying, because he hasn't crossed, I'm giving you 40%, but if you had crossed, I would have given you 40%. But because you haven't crossed, take 50%. So there may be some element of concerns or unfairness about those at the boundaries. But we did the analysis, and what we found was that because it is mathematical, because it's an optimization, the financial effect is insignificant between any two boundaries. And also, the proportion of pensioners who are affected at the boundaries were not that significant. I think that is what I can say about the only limitation of the model. So means testing is purely CPI, and that is the best practice that is recommended across the whole world. I'm sure if we were to ask many people here the basis of pension indexation, in fact, it's even part of the main document in our survey. I think about 82% said they didn't understand the basis by which pensions are indexed, and that is a gap that maybe we need to deal with. So here, means testing is purely on the consumer price index. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
600 cedis as my monthly pension, but my other, that's the basic. So that's what you fill in your pocket. But what he is trying to say is that after I've given you the 375 cedis or the 600 cedis, every year I should increase it so that you are not worse off. Because this year, inflation is around, the government is projecting about 8% at the end of the year. Next year, I should give you something that will make up for the 8% and a little more. And that is where they are coming from. So that you, because let's face it, your 1,000 cedis is taxed. So you lose part of your 1,000 cedis. They will take social security from your 1,000 cedis. And I'm sure one or two things, your welfare dues, and by the time they give you your take home, it's not 1,000 cedis. It's even around maybe 600, 700. which is basically what SSNIT is going to pay you at the end of the day. But he's saying, oh, the institution is saying, okay, this year I've given you 600. Next year what can SSNIT do to make me better off and not worse off? And that's the conversation we are having now. Are you better? Are you okay now?
Yeah, I understand, but
Because I see table 13, which highlight comparing the effectiveness of pension redistribution model under the existing model and the proposed variation-based model. I don't know if that's the table that actually highlights that.
It's not table. Okay, so let's do it this way after.
Okay.
Because I am sure, and the other researchers know that
Yeah.
they actually compare to really establish that this model
Exactly.
saves some money for
Very good. Because to me, if I'm dealing with my constituent, that will be the key output they may be looking out for. And I also wanted to understand from the speaker from SSNIT, if he rightly indicated that in determining the wage inflation, you take into consideration issues of productivity. And also, you made mention that we need to make reference to ability to pay. But I'm particularly interested in the productivity aspect. That would you be considering productivity in determining wages for category of the population that are outside of the the labor force, of the workforce? Exactly. Because for me, in determining even what you earn per month, it should be based on your marginal contributions to the overall operations of an entity or organization. So that already takes into consideration productivity. So if at the end, when I'm exiting the labor market and my monthly wages are also going to be determined by productivity, when I'm not in active labor, I'm not active in the labor market, then is that not a bit duplication? And with regards to ability to pay, I believe that is a variation between what is earned, or the contributions, and the expenditure or the payment. And for that matter, the reserves that are there will determine your ability to actually pay. And I think that is why these conversations are very important, to see how we can sustain the reserves in order to enhance ability to pay in that regard. But I want clarification if the monthly pension is actually also determined using productivity indicators or factors. Yep.
Thank you very much. I think what I did was to quote the law: price inflation, productivity, and merit. So it's not SSNIT using wage inflation. It's the law asking SSNIT to use wage inflation. Are we okay? So I think it was just to make sure our pensioners are getting a better indexation rate. But it also gives us a little room. And that is where we have to go for authorization from MPRA. If we are not going to use the wage inflation, but to use any other rate, then we have to go to MPRA for authorization before we can do that. So that SSNIT does not just get up and say, even though this year wage inflation is 20%, we are not going to do that. We'll give people 10%. So that's what we want to do. For me, is a check on SSNIT, so that SSNIT does not just get up and do whatever it wants. So if we are going to go according to what we are saying, then what we should do is to increase pensions by inflation, like what is being proposed by the institute. But that's why I say that for anything to be done, number one, we have to reform the law. And Madam has said, apparently MPRA is trying to do that. And we have 1 month to maybe submit your proposals to them to incorporate it in the new reforms that is going to come up. We have also tried over the years to do reforms, and I'm sure it's get to MPRA. And over the years, what we have aimed to do in SSNIT is to make sure that whatever pension increases we have done will be slightly higher than inflation, not all, slightly, except in those years where we have those hyperinflations. Those ones we cannot do. Because if you are going to look at 50% and say we are going to give pensioners 50%, I don't think we are going to be able to pay. When we talk about the ability to pay, currently, as at September, the monthly pensions alone, we are not talking about the other benefit that we paid. The monthly pensions alone that we paid was about 554 million Ghana cedis. So even if you increase pensions by 10%, that means we are hitting 600 million. So when we say ability to pay, do we have the liquidity sitting down there so that we don't want to default on our pensions? We pay pensions every third Thursday in the month. We want to make sure that on the third Thursday in the month, the pensioner gets that, and the pensioners will tell you. So we don't want to say that we're going to increase pensions and it will get to 700 cedis, and by the third Thursday we cannot pay. So we look at how much liquidity we have there, because most of our investments are also in other things, real estate and all those things. So you don't just want to get up and say, okay, inflation is 15, we are going to get to 15, but when we look at it, we may not have the money to pay. And then it will become another issue. So that is where we are talking about the ability to pay, the liquids to pay. I mean, every month we get contributions. Is the contributions enough? He's saying that we have moved from, is it 14% to 67% of the expenditure?
So it moved from 32% to 65.
65 is even more than that. And that the increase is mainly due to the benefits that we are paying. It's not the administrative expenses. It's mainly because now people are getting very high pensions. I mean, last week you had to pay a survivor's benefit of 4 million Ghana cedis to one family. So if you are getting multiples of that, then we are looking at, that's why we talk about the ability to pay. When you also increase pension, it increases our survivor's payment. Because this person that we paid was initially on a monthly pension of about 14,000. By the time he died, we were paying him 90,000. So when we convert the honest part pension, it got to 4 million. So anytime we increase pensions, we increase our survivors. So all these things come into play when we are talking about the ability to pay. If I increase your pension right now, God forbid, the person dies, how much more am I going to pay in terms of survivors? So that is where I'm coming from. I hope I've answered your question.
Yes, maybe on table 6, debt. To actually know the, in terms of contributions, you've rightly indicated 16.8 billion. And then I see expenditure, right? The benefits is around 13.2 billion. I wanted to actually know what the total income is and then what the total expenditure is. And if it's also possible to subcategorize and provide the figures for benefits. Benefit is there, which is 13.2 billion. And then administrative expenses, we know that it's just for 2020 valuation, it was 1.5.
Can I hold you there?
Billion.
These results are from the actual valuations. The last column you see, the 2023-2021 actual valuation report is not available. So
it's not available.
Yeah, it's not available.
Okay.
So we cannot have those figures.
We are working on it. They'll get it soon.
Okay. Yeah. Because I believe that once we know how much the growth in terms of administrative expenses compared to payment of benefit, then we'll know where the lapses or gaps are. And actually, sometimes it may also inform the model to adopt in trying to mitigate the challenges.
I think the contributions it should also account for the 2.5% that we send to NHI. If we take that one, then even our ratio will go up even more.
Right. So I guess this calls for FES. We need more expert discussion. And SSNIT, these days you've stopped. I know you reach out into the communities every year. You do that, yeah. But it means that you need to talk to us more, so that we can erode those impressions we have about you, because obviously we have impressions. You know, we have impressions, sometimes very bad ones, but forgive us, you know. So, any more? Okay, there's a questioner here. Chair, may I? Yeah.
My question goes to the SSNIT lady. No, it has to do with she's citing most of their investments in real estate. Yes. And I am just wondering, look at World Trade Center, for example. The place is literally empty. And if you take people's pensions, contributions, and you invest into these facilities, and no one occupies them, and the people are saying, we need an increase in our pensions, how are you able to balance that? And these properties are there, nobody is occupying them. What it means is that it's also deteriorating the facilities. So how do we believe that SSNIT is actually managing our pension funds well?
Right, that's a question. And there any more questions? You want to take the answer straight away? You have a question.
Is it also for SSNIT?
Okay, so it is not a difficult one per se, but then I'm looking at the investment you do. And then I went to the net, and then I'm looking at the kind of investments you can venture into. And then you say healthcare, finance, real estate, energy, technology, manufacturing, agribusiness, hospitality, and then restructuring companies. But I want to ask SSNIT and then MPRA. As a Ghanaian, I think that some of the areas where SSNIT could also look at, for instance, if 5, 10 years ago or 15 years ago, SSNIT had worked with either GCB Bank or maybe Bank of Ghana to ensure that all the cement manufacturing companies we have in Ghana were established by them, I'm sure they will not struggle with getting more liquidity, because then they can sell the produce they are going to produce. There are other areas where SSNIT can also look at, and SSNIT, I don't know if you have other investment personnel outside of people who did finance. Because if you are just looking at people who did finance, let's say those with economics, banking and finance, those who did pure finance, these are people who will just be looking at things related to finance and other things. But there are other key areas that you could also look at, and possibly you may have to look at these areas and not just the real estate, like the woman said behind us. Because if you look at just the real estate, unfortunately for most of the buildings you put up, my personal view is that some of them, they are even obsolete before they even start, we start using them. And for me, that is not good enough. So please, please, please look at that side for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so we don't want to reduce this to, and that's the last we're going to take for SSNIT. Forgive me. But not SSNIT. Okay.
The investments are on the right track. They are safe. Real estates, we've done them long ago. It has its challenges. We are trying to correct them as we go along. But into the future, there's a new paradigm shift, and these things may not happen again. But I must say that investment can go wrong even when you put your best foot forward. Mm-hmm. So forgive SSNIT for some of the investment failures. Yeah, thank you.
Right, so new paradigm, as in the reset.
Proportion, or if you like, the ratio of contribution income to pensioners, you realize that if you do the projections, it declines over time. So obviously what it is telling you is that your numerator, okay, your numerator is at a decreasing rate while the denominator is at a increasing rate. That is if you take the contribution income versus the pensioners that we have. So over time, you see that it's on a decline. And that basically goes to point out the issue of sustainability. But for this particular variance model, what it also sought to do was to be able to look at the redistribution to support those at the bottom, that is those in the poverty line. But the gains that would have been made within this model is the fact that when you are doing the redistribution, it's not all that is gained from the top or the upper echelon that will be redistributed. So at the end of it, once you redistribute, some margins are left, and that is what goes a long way to also address the issue of sustainability over time. So that is just what I wanted to add. So that is where the gains actually comes in the redistribution. It's not everything that is gained that is redistributed. There is some amount that will be left, and that in a long run could also support the issue of sustainability. Thank you.
Informal economic workers joining the fund, and we went to Kumasi, Takrady to do some roadshows, and we had a lot of them joining. Unfortunately, when SSNIT abandoned that project, they were left just like that without giving them the company that was taking over their funds. Later we got to hear it was HFC or something. NCAC, yeah. And you call and they are not welcoming. The way they talk to you and everything was bad. We reported severally to SSNIT, but well, we don't know what has come of that. Now we have the People's Pension Trust actually getting them on board with the 30. And we hear SSNIT now has seed, and they want us to find a way of getting them in. But because of that experience, it becomes very difficult for anyone to show his or her face again. Because anytime they talk about the first one, they use me as the one who actually lured them into joining. Although Pensions Trust actually told them that they are trying to work a way out to get their monies for them. We haven't had any concrete thing concerning that. And so it's now bothersome for them. Anytime we talk about pensions, although we know SSNIT is more reliable and whatever, it becomes a problem introducing them again and trying to get their confidence into joining the scheme that SSNIT is coming out with.
The issues with the social security are vast, and we need to find a way to gradually solve them. We're all looking for a better end of the day, how our pockets feel. Madam just said that in the end, it is the benefits that we receive as pensioners that will make us happy, and as current contributors, we want to be hopeful that when we get to the end of the road, that's when we can retire, we'll be able to get a better benefit. So ACR, in this mandate, is trying to find a way to help SSNIT as much as possible, and not just SSNIT, but the social protection arena, which includes social security as well as pensions and other things. So we are very grateful for all the inputs that you've made. Like I said, this is just the beginning of a scheme to see how we can improve the organization of SSNIT. So we are very glad that you came and that you made inputs. The inputs will be well noted. We'll go back to 8 years and then organize what we call an experts roundtable discussion. And like we heard the country director said, his job is to make sure that this thing goes to the political arena where decisions are going to be taken. But before then, we want to make sure that the system that we're thinking of is indeed what it should be and what can bring some progress to the same negotiation process. So we thank you very much for coming, and I enjoyed sharing this information for you. Thank you.
standing on the existing protocols, I want to say a big thank you for everyone here who has taken the time out of their busy schedules to be here. One particular thing I find interesting is the contributions. The contributions will go a long way to make the work better and make the process much enhanced. And I like that SSNIT were here to also let us know what they are doing, even in the face of all the inadequacies that we still have with the existing structures for pension. Pension concerns all of us. You work, you are poor when you are working, you retire, you remain poor. You work, you are rich when you are working, you retire, you remain rich. So what then is the essence of contributing? When I know I'm poor, when I finish working, I'm still going to remain poor. Why don't I keep my money under my bed? But the law says my force, I have to contribute also. So yeah, it's good. We would continue the engagement. We would continue the discussion. Like my country director said, this is to move the policymakers to see what they can do to improve. Because various countries have run theirs the way we are running ours. There have been situations, pitfalls, there have been circumstances where things were almost collapsed. So we can learn lessons and make ours work much better. So thank you again. Thank you so much, ACRR, for the time, the energy, and the effort. Those of you who have to travel from Temali, Kumasi, just to come here for this discussion, we appreciate the commitment, we appreciate the energy and the time that is spent. So thank you all. And lastly, I want to say thank you to God for making the opportunity for us, granting us the strength and the health to gather here and to have this discussion. We'll take the discussion forward, and then that round table of experts will definitely happen so that we can streamline the document, we can improve on the document, and then we go to publish the document and we do the policy advocacy. Thank you very much, and thank you for your time.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go to work, cause my boss is a jerk, and I'm not even that paid. I need a change in my life, cause I don't feel alive, and there's nothing that makes me happy. Hold my beer for a minute, I'm about to quit my job, cash in for a ticket.